Hello, everyone. This is Bitcoin Core App Design Call number 71. As usual, we'll give kind of a dev and design update. And Harold was about to start, but I wanted to first actually gather topics for this conversation so we can be sure that we get through everything. On this list right now or we can just put dev update in here real quick. And I shared this document also in the chat, so you're more than welcome to add things in. Then we had the use of dialogs and drawers versus full pages, bloody animations. On the design side, we had the peers details page that I think we just need to kind of wrap up. And then on the design docs, milestone 1.3, there's a PR that's going on that I reviewed, maybe just something to quickly check in. Anything else? Research?
From my end, because we're having the call tomorrow, so I'd rather not say anything. I'll just keep it clean. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So Harold, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so I've moved this over to stack views and to the migration for navbar 2. It does so many things that this is going to be like a big commit. There's 29 files changed, 400 additions, 300 deletions, and it's all entangled together. Normally we'd have like small commits and many, so normally this type of change would be split over many commits, but everything was so entangled in moving that over to stack views and to navbar 2 that it kind of just became a monster commit there. But it solves a lot of issues where things didn't feel polished before. One of them is tabbing. So tabbing before, if you guys remember.
Sorry to interrupt. I keep interrupting you again. Just to give some context, so the stack views is how when you navigate through the application, there are multiple pages and screens, and sometimes they slide up, sometimes down, sometimes left, sometimes right, sometimes they instantly transition, sometimes they slide in from the bottom and left, and all of this stuff. And the application needs to handle that somehow elegantly, and it's actually quite complex. I remember dealing with that from iOS development a long time ago. And so, Harold, it sounds like you just switched from one way of doing this to another way of doing this.
Yeah, it's one of the things that it does. And so switching that over solves a couple of things, and it's one of them is if you remember, we have tabbing, and one of the main reasons we have tabbing is it is one way that people interact with an application, right? Tabbing and space, but also tabbing is going to be important for the accessibility features. You would cycles. So the tabbing flow, you cycle through the elements on the page, and you want to stick to the elements that are on that page. And if you remember before, you could actually tab through the entire onboarding flow, even if you were on the onboarding cover page. But it's hidden. You visually, of course, you don't move on to the next page until you click the action. But the tab focus would follow through the entire onboarding flow. Moving over to stack views keeps the focus on the current loading page. So you just tab through the elements on there. So when we are able to figure out how exactly we want to do the accessibility features, at least now we know, okay, focus is on that one page. Another thing with polishing is before, if you drag the application, you could see the previous and the next page that would follow if you were to go back or forth. And now that's not possible because the stack view handles that much better, and only one page is visible at a time with the stack view. So that's with the stack views. With the moving over to navbar 2 is going to be needed for the next milestone and how we want that to be designed. The loader approach is very inefficient. And so this branch just does so many things that you can just think of it kind of like as a reset on all of these files to being a lot better. So that's kind of the polishing aspect of it. But that is the main work to be. Yeah, Habasa, you want to go ahead?
What do you mean loader is inefficient? In what way?
So before we had for the navbar we were using loaders, and then we were aliasing everywhere, right? We were aliasing down from all these different pages to get to the navbar. And so now instead of doing that, we're keeping the definition uh, constricted to the page itself. So for something like settings about, so for example, let me get specific here and send a page. Okay, so I think this should open a specific page. Does that, if you guys click it, do you get to settings about QML? The last link. I think it should.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so here, before we had to alias down many times. Apparently there's a computational aspect of that and dereferencing that. But this is much cleaner because every page we define, it's everything that it needs is within that page instead of like in different places. The definition of what that page is actually defined in like 3 different places, right, over the code base. And so you have to scour all these different places to figure out, okay, during this state, this page actually looks like this, and during this state, the page looks like this, and it's spread out over many files, where the states that page is in should be defined within that page itself. And so with the loaders, there's no reason to have loaders if it's just defined within that page itself. Yeah, Habasa?
Is performance gain visually can be noticed?
No, yeah, because it's just at maximum there's 3 elements, right? So so that savings isn't crazy, but the code style of just keeping everything where like that's defined for a page where it's defined is a big improvement.
Yeah,
I see. Thanks.
Yeah, code can get super messy when it's just too split up and spread across too many folders and different places.
So now something like the settings pages, everything that it needs is defined there. And before it was defined in 2 places because we had onboarding and then the post node. And so now it has kind of like an API, and that's the design we want to keep, where these pages send back a signal and then parents handle that signal to do what they're going to do, where before we had like a nasty entanglement everywhere, and then we were calling a parent ID. So like a page is specific to a parent ID. So it was a bit of a mess, but now this is much better.
So is that about an event bus handling or just event handling between all the different pages?
Yeah,
and
so event
components?
handling. So like in settings about, when we press back, before we were defining it within, we were defining what the page is within where it's used. And so where it's used, we also wrote that logic code for that page. So okay, so to be specific, settings about, we use it in the onboarding cover page.
Yeah.
And so there we defined its navbar elements in onboarding cover and wrote the logic for settings about, right? And so now it's here, and when the back button is pressed, it just sends a signal like back button pressed within this page. And so then in onboarding cover, we just handle, did we get a back click from settings about? Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. It's how you componentize, modularize all these different pieces, and then how you compose them afterwards. into user
And
flows.
Is this, sorry, I'm just asking
yeah,
random, is this the QML code language? Like, is this what QML looks like?
yeah.
Cool. It's so clean. Like, it's just super clean. I've seen different sort of code languages, and this one is just, it looks so, I know it's not simple, but it just looks so clean, like how everything is. So that's just,
Uh,
That's just
that
beautiful code by Errol.
that was the main purpose why QML was designed at all, to make it understandable by not by developers but designers as well.
mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
It's QML native feature. It's great you notice it.
No, I do notice it. I've been working with the wallet scrutiny case study for most of today, and when I compare HTML to this, it's just, there's a clear difference. So yeah, interesting, very
Yeah,
interesting.
the dream is one day designers just write the code.
Mm.
Just write the front end code.
Then they're not designers anymore.
At least, at least, at least designers for designers, it's very easy to adjust some aspects like colors, size, whatever designers work with. It's easy to adjust, recompile if designers are familiar with compiling process, and to see the result of this change immediately. That's QML provide this opportunity, and that's great.
Yep.
Yeah, and so for the next update, I just have so many branches, but so this next one, this is a big performance improvement. And now that things are getting unthawed, I'm kind of looking at where we were before, and things had been submitted kind of in a state where, maybe that's not the best idea. So with the network traffic graph, in the when so if you have it set at the 24-hour period, the backend would be submitting a property to the QML code of half a megabyte in size every second. And that's a terrible idea, to be submitting to the QML layer a variable of half a megabyte in size every second. So we're going to pre-compute the window sizes. That at least helps with redrawing and moving between time frames. But then one thing that I still have to finish out in this branch is we just can't give this list to the QML side. What we have to do is just emit just the rate, and then on the QML side, it'll be responsible for consuming these rates and for creating its graph from there. So instead of the backend emitting every second, it would be a total of about almost a megabyte in size, um, in the worst case, if we're doing the 24-hour and we're emitting some other pieces of data, which is terrible. I mean, we could probably crash QML in that way, and we probably have before. We just didn't notice because maybe it was hidden behind something else. But yeah, so we just completely reworking the network traffic graph, because right now I don't think any of us have tested the GUI with these long time frames, but I'm sure, or extensively having that traffic graph set at the long time frame. But I'm sure if we did now, we'd probably crash it. And of course, we cannot have areas where we're crashing the QML side, because that's an attack vector, right? People are running a node, and if there's just simple ways to crash the GUI from the QML side, that's ways to crash nodes that are the GUI, right? So we need to be conscious of that when we do new features, because back then, I mean, I even thought, oh, like there's no problem, but there's definitely a problem with the way the network traffic graph is right now.
Yeah. So that means that when the page, if I understand correctly, when the page loads, it needs to get the whole graph, right? The last whatever hours, and afterwards it just gets the latest update and just kind of the client handles just updates
So
things on the front.
that's not so right now, the way it is every second
You get
it
the whole
gets the
thing.
entire
Yeah,
history all over again, and
yeah,
it continues forever, right? So
yeah.
you're getting yeah, so that's completely inefficient in every way.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Would that, in a practical sense, so if I, in a practical sense, I'm on Bitcoin Core and I'm viewing the, well, let me see if I get the correct, I'm viewing the network traffic graph. So because it's downloading all these, it's submitting all these large variables, then it's going to slow down my view of it and how quickly the graph updates. Does that make sense? Or,
Potentially, yeah.
okay.
And so right, it would be switching between time frames that would look bad right now.
Hmm.
Um, you know, it is only half a megabyte, and most computers can handle that. It's just completely inefficient, and you know, technically, it could lead to crashes on even a good computer, just because who knows if QML even likes to get that amount of data every second. Yeah, Habasa.
We have current reports from users regarding traffic network graph in Bitcoin Core that on some system it constantly consumes one core of CPU at 100%. So
Yeah.
this is actually an issue.
Hmm.
So
And
the
and
yeah.
the approach Harald suggests is at architectural level is much more efficient. That's good.
Hebasto, where are these reports coming in? Are they posting on GitHub or?
I believe it is on GitHub or GUI repo or main repo. It was it was around. So I'll try to find it.
Yeah, I linked it.
Uh,
It was on the Q2 widgets GUI repo.
Okay,
Awesome.
thank you. Oh, Will Clark. Ah, Will's great. Okay.
Yeah, but this still applies to us because the idea behind the current implementation is very similar. And so in both scenarios, the GUI is being fed massive amounts of data where we could just so my thinking now is the network traffic tower will just emit the rate, and then line graph is going to consume the data, process that data for its time span, and the look back data can be confined within the graph. So then what it does is passing to the QML side, it just needs to pass a path. So it can just pass a computed path for the line graph. And then on the QML side, it's drawn. So that's the amount of data passed is very, very small.
Interesting. But yeah, so you would actually render the graph in vectors on the backend, if you will.
So right now we compute the path for the graph with the values and knowing that the graph is going to be a certain size.
Mm-hmm.
And so I forgot exactly how I do it, but we already compute that on the back end side, and so that's done with the line graph.
Mm-hmm.
So saying to rework it is. Uh, Instead of passing this data around everywhere, we just pass one rate to the line graph, and the line graph internally computes it. So that line graph grows in size in terms of the variable that's in it, but what's getting passed around is one rate, just a one float value is getting passed around. When you think of all these connections, there's just a one float getting passed around. The line graph will grow in size because it has a variable that's going to keep these float values in an array. It'll compute the painter path at every update and pass that painter path to the QML side. Where right now to the QML side, we are passing in the entire value list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Question. So I have the network graph open here on my phone here on the side. Would it still be possible to tap somewhere and draw a little dot exactly at the line where I tapped and tell me what the time, date, and value is at that point? If the front end doesn't really have the whole series of data points. You're muted, and I'm not sure if you're saying something.
Sorry, yeah. So I was saying, yeah, no, it would still be possible. And that's something that I actually would like done with the traffic graph. So I did think about that. So
Okay,
we would
awesome.
just embed the time and then some other changes, and then we could do that. Yeah.
Network graphs. Okay, sounds awesome. Optimization is happening. Cool. That's awesome.
One more thing is DRG has been working on getting a workflow around loading a UTXO snapshot. And of course, we don't really have designs for it. So he's kind of just figuring out how does that look like in terms of wiring from the GUI side to a backend side. But it's a really cool exploration, and he has got something where it does load up a UTXO snapshot and it shows it in the logs. We don't have wallet functionality in the GUI yet, so it's the usage is limited. But it is cool that he's exploring that. He's not on the call now, but yeah, he's been exploring that. So when we're ready, we could do designs around onboarding and how would somebody load a UTXO snapshot for assumeUTXO.
Okay, so okay. Do you have a link to that? Is there something?
Yeah, I just linked it.
Okay.
I can send screenshots in the Discord of what it looks like right now.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. And I see. I just want to make sure I understand it clearly. There seem to be two things. You said assumeUTXO snapshot. AssumeUTXO is basically when I start up, and before whatever points defined there, it's not going to verify all of the transactions. It's just going to assume things are cool, right? And the other thing,
no, so that's assume valid.
That's assume valid. And what's assumeUTXO?
So assumeUTXO is a way for it's supposed to be a way for you to essentially torrent a UTXO state, and then the wallet is usable immediately, or much quicker than IBD, because you're downloading 6-7 gigabytes of data versus 550 plus, and so the wallet is usable much quicker. In the background, you still do the same IBD, the same validation. You still download the entire block data and validate it and process it, but it just allows you to use the wallet quicker with minimal security trade-offs. Although right now you don't like torrent the UTXO snapshot from the network or anything like that. You need to load one that you have. So somebody needs a way so you can create the snapshot from a node and then load it onto like core running on your phone, for example, right? So the wallet is usable immediately. But so somebody needs to load the snapshot file that's on their device. So it's the same type of thinking behind picking a data directory. It would be like you click a button, load UTXO snapshot. We go to the directory picker, and you pick that snapshot file, and then we just load it in.
Yeah, was that a new 0.26 feature?
AssumeUTXO will be in 26, yeah.
Okay, because I think I just heard about that on the Bitcoin Explained podcast. I think they talked about it. Okay, so that's basically saying during onboarding, you might say, hey, I want to start with this snapshot. I don't want to start from scratch. And then you pick a file from that you got somehow, and it's just going to use that as a foundation.
It's going to use
And then
that.
backfill.
So it's going to use that so that you can spend and receive much quicker than having to wait to go through IBD on a new node. So that's really the main use case there for it.
Okay, yeah, that seems like a good discussion to. It seems like something specific we should talk through exactly how users would work with that in the first version and then be potentially in the future, so people don't have to do it manually do this anymore. Maybe. That seems like a discussion in itself to have. Does everyone understand this? I halfway understand it. Does everyone?
I'm trying to get my head around it. I mean, what
Okay, cool.
is it like? Is it like offline transactions or something like? Is it like?
No, so Habaso, do you want to explain it, or do you want to hop in?
Speaking of assumeUTXO, it means that we at the beginning, when we just trying to start our full node from scratch, we need to synchronize it. The process calls initial block downloading, and to verify every block, every transaction in every block, and eventually we should gain a set of unspent coins, or other terms, transaction output, unspent transaction outputs, which is verified by us. So we do not rely on trusting in anyone. But this process takes some time, depending on machine capabilities. It could take a few days. It could take a couple of weeks. And assumeUTXO suggests that we could use at some level of trust, we could use a snapshot of some other peers from the network, properly signed, and while using it, we continue to verify all blocks and all transactions by ourselves. So at some point, both these approaches should merge with the same UTXO set, with the same set of unspent transactions output. If that's achieved, that means we could discard this snapshot and continue to use our own snapshot we already synchronized. So using snapshots allow us to operate with the blockchain, and before we finish our own verifying of the whole blockchain.
Right.
So
and it's no, and that's a new feature on the new Bitcoin.
It's not a protocol feature, so it doesn't mean any kind of fork. It's change in the way how we could speed up our initial block downloading. For example, right now we have another feature which allows us speed up. It calls we have a height of blocks not too far from the tip of the blockchain, and until all blocks from the Genesis block until that high, we assume that we could do not verify all signatures. So we assuming that signatures are valid until that. It will also save a few CPU cycles for validation, because if blocks are buried under the current tip, for example, at a couple thousands of blocks, we could assume that rely that other peers in the network already verified, and we could skip verifying signatures. Also, this feature could be disabled by a user if user provides assumed valid or value equals 0. The node will verify every signature starting from this Genesis block.
Right.
So
it's a user option? It's going to be a user option?
yes, exactly. It is a user option. As general way, it could be provided in configuration file or in command line. Current Qt widget-based GUI has a proposal to add this option into onboarding screen, because current Qt widget-based GUI do not have nice onboarding routine, just one screen, and there is a proposal to add assume valid to that screen.
Gotcha.
And I'm not, if we current QML based GUI lacks this feature, we could add it along with options which manage the upcoming assumeUTXO.
Gotcha. And sorry for my ignorance. Is this a question of is it speed versus security? Is that the trade-off?
Actually, not,
No.
because at the final point, we will have fully verified set of coins. The main point, until full verification, users should not rely on any balance in wallet he's looking at.
So it's like a preview until it's
Yes, exactly. Until initial block download and finish, no data must be trusted at all.
All right. Well, that's important, I guess.
But if you trust a little bit, you can send and receive much quicker.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of what it allows. Yeah.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah. So from a user perspective, we might have another onboarding screen that may or may not that explains this, with maybe an option to turn it on and off. And then once we get to the node or we get to the wallet screen, there may be an additional state where you can basically use it, but it has to tell you that it's still doing things in the background.
Yeah.
And it's different from syncing the node.
Syncing the node still happens. It's just happening in the background, but you have a balance that you know of immediately, versus having to wait until IBD to know of the balance.
Right. I can see the value in that, as long as you're warned, not, if there's a warning not to, if there's a risk involved in doing something, even if it's a small risk, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, from the GUI's perspective, I mean, if you know of how to construct a transaction manually, and you know of a certain UTXO, technically you could just submit this transaction to the network. But from the perspective of the GUI, if you wanted to construct a transaction, you would need to wait until IBD, until we could do this, right? And until IBD is finished, essentially. But with assumeUTXO, you do get a UTXO state, so you can create transactions if you so wanted to. And so it allows for the wallet to be usable much quicker. Factors multiple times quicker. than IBD. So it's useful in many ways. It's just we got to think about how do we design it properly and let them know, like, well, yeah, I mean, IBD is not finished. Yeah.
Harold, Yashraj here.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask, like, would we also require a UX to generate the UTXO snapshot? Because to load the snapshot, you would need to have it from somewhere, right?
Yeah, so we would want a nice way to both create the snapshot from the GUI. So for example, like let's think of this specific flow. And the specific flow is you have a node running on the desktop, and this has been your node. Now you want to run a node on your phone. So you create a snapshot from the desktop, and then you move that over to your phone, and then you load that snapshot on your phone, so the wallet is usable, and then IBD will still occur. But so we can think of that one flow in terms of what we need to design. So we need a nice way to create it, a nice way to load it, and then ways to display to the user that that's going on. A plug on saving Satoshi.
Yeah, chapter 6 is about constructing transactions. So I just connected the dots there.
Yeah, that saving Satoshi sounds so awesome. I keep wanting to try it, but I forget because I remember, like, in the early testing, I did the chapter 1, I think, and even chapter 2 maybe, and then I kind of dropped off. Uh, but yeah, I definitely want to do this. Harold, on this one though, what if, like, there is some issue with the UTXO snapshot? So so my guess is that as the IBD occurs, it might be able to detect that there is something wrong with the UTXO snapshot, if there is something wrong.
Yeah, I mean, so for example, Habasa, correct me if I'm wrong, but the network is not transmitting these snapshots yet, but you can create it yourself. And so if you create it yourself from a node that you already have, and you're lying to yourself, there's like an issue there if you want to lie to yourself. But so if you create it yourself, we're assuming that you're trusting yourself again when you load it. So there shouldn't be an issue with that. Now, if you're loading a snapshot from some random guy from Telegram, there could be an issue there.
Yeah, and also it might be that something is wrong, like there was some mistake while, like, generating the file or something. So it's like,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, so it doesn't have to be malicious, but yeah, but I love the use case where if I have another node already and I just want to run a new one, I should be able to download this and, like, immediately uh, begin doing, like, transactions and stuff. I love that.
Yeah. It's a cool feature. Yeah, Habasa.
Right now, for this workflow, when I have a new node and having another node already synced, without assumeUTXO, I copying blocks directory,
Right.
and
Yeah.
in new node running reindex, which just do not download the block from the network. It just read from the disk and creates the new set of unspent transaction outputs, which means reindex. And it also pretty time consuming. So having ability to create own UTXO snapshot, which of course I trust 100%, is a great improvement.
Yeah, makes sense. We have about 15 minutes left. Should we move forward to some of the other topics?
Yeah, I see. I think next is the use of dialogs in drawers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that one has come up before, and I just wanted to pull up an example here real quick. So just to visualize this, and this is really a desktop thing. So right now on desktop, sometimes our screen looks like this. There are like 7 text fields. That's pretty much it. But on mobile, that's much more common. We're much more used, like much tighter space, right? We're used to many, many screens that quickly kind of slide back and forth, which is not, it's just not common on desktop. So I think the question then is, on desktop, do we sometimes do things like this? This is an example of a drawer here. So instead of the whole thing being taken over, we just kind of slide this thing in, we do something, and it slides out. It's like it's not meant for activities, user flows that you're deeply involved with, but things that temporarily, allow you to change something or interact with something real quick. Maybe pick the question is that correct, right?
Yeah, so a big thing, because I was talking with ProMag a lot about our architecture and certain things we want to do, and he does have a strong opinion against full screen animations, because there are so there are performance implications, but I think that it's small, and but also too, I think it's his opinion against that, and so but if the design likes it, we'll keep them. I just wanted to relay that there does seem to be some use cases where drawers do fit in nicely, especially in onboarding. Advanced storage is just 2 options. It's the prune target and do you want to prune? So it's just those 2 options, and then the advanced connection settings. That does seem like an area where we could just like bring up a drawer from the bottom, for example. But yeah, so it is ProMag's opinion against full screen animations.
Okay, so there's different. Sorry, so just to summarize, there are 2 different concerns, and one of the things you mentioned were, I think, one of these settings subscreens where
So
we just have
yeah,
2
storage
options.
amount. Yeah, or
Oh,
connection
yeah, this
settings
one
is
here.
one of them.
Yeah. So in this case, do we need a whole screen? Not really. We have 2 options, and so there's one performance, which is its own conversation, right? And then the other thing is, and then the other discussion here is context versus consistency. Consistency says, well, we always treat this the same way, so it's predictable, and we could just reuse the same pattern. Context would say, well, in this situation, we want to do it differently because there are just 2 options, right? And if things are both, sometimes context is better, and sometimes consistency is better. You kind of need to discuss that, I think, based on what you're looking at. But if you're too inconsistent, then it's also really messy, and the UI becomes kind of unpredictable.
That's sort of one of my main concerns is Christoph explained it, these 2 use cases. One would be, sorry, you said contextually, and the other one would be that it's consistency, contextually consistency. With the consistency option, it's very safe because you say, maybe an example is the drawer only comes out for the settings. It's only for settings and that's it, nothing else. That feels consistent. Contextual, my only thing is, with the contextual thing, I could see it as I know all of us have these in our homes. You have the garbage drawer, right? You have the dumping drawer. It's kind of that drawer where you get some little thing from the shop and then you're not going to use it and you pop it in there, or the batteries or the keys or the extra keys. So my only concern is that might end up becoming the dumping drawer if it becomes contextual, because Bitcoin Core has so many different options that we could just put all those options in the drawer, just put it in the drawer, put it in the drawer as time goes on. So yeah, but I'm not very familiar with drawers. Haven't seen them made much on the apps that I use.
Yeah. So I think there are a couple ways to go about this. One would be simple. Well, we're just going to implement the first version with our best guess, then we're going to use it, and then we'll make adjustments by using it, by actually, which sometimes that's a very good idea because you never quite know what it feels like until you have it in your hands, and then you can do a second round of iteration, and maybe you'll end up with drawers, modals, or something else. Or we do try to go through this now and try to, like right now, we basically said consistent. That's the main thing. And we could go through the different situations and see where it makes sense to change that. And I think the other thing would be, if we have a drawer that slides in from the right, we introduce a difference between desktop and mobile. Like on mobile, you don't really have drawers, or like everything's a drawer, if you will, right? You have tons of screen sliding, but the drawer idea doesn't quite work there. So we would introduce that differentiation. I don't know, what are the thoughts of the crowd? Go ahead, Yashash.
Yeah. So I think I definitely see the point where there are screens where there are like very few settings, and so they seem like we could maybe handle them with like a drawer or something. Um, I also see the point where we have these full page transitions because we have a different screen. Um, so I see those points, but uh, how, however, I don't feel confident that like having a drawer or like a dialogue might be the right solution for something like that. Because so here's my rationale for that. My understanding is that like a drawer is like a UI element for like a quick action that you can quickly dismiss, and like you just like try to do something, this drawer appears, you do it, and then it disappears, right? So yeah, so in that case it's like that's not really the use case that we really have. Like that's not exactly the what we are trying to do in like the storage settings or some other settings, right? So it's not like a quick action. It is a proper it is like a proper uh, uh, section with like a dedicated function, and it I feel like that should be a separate script. I don't see how a drawer solves that exactly. And also that goes to the consistency point where you can say that yeah, so because the storage settings only has two options, we will do the drawer, but like some other setting subsection might have like 5 or 6 items, so we will not do the drawer. That's like inconsistent for sure. And I feel like uh, on desktop, so as someone who is like a desktop enthusiast, saying like I am not a big fan of the UI that we have for like the same type of UI that we are implementing for mobile and then also for desktop. I do see the point about the big transitions, but then again, on a desktop, this drawers and dialogues, I feel like even they also seem like very big transitions, and like those animations can be like distracting if we use those drawers and dialogues in like the desktop context. So I'm not sure that they will exactly solve the issue of the big animations and transitions that that I feel like might be a valid issue. I don't see a big issue with like that 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 being identified as an issue. Did that make sense? Yeah, I'm hoping it did, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't have much of an opinion on it. I think that's a designer thing. But also the remember, it's not just dialogues and drawers. It's also about the full screen animation between switching. I do like the animation. I think it makes it fluid. But that's also so that's kind of Promag's main thing is against those full screen animations when we're switching through whatever.
And is it because he doesn't like stuff moving around so much, or is it because of technical?
There's a small performance hit for animating between the pages,
Yeah.
um, and that could be a consideration. It could be even if depending on the profiling we can do, we could potentially disable animations between screens on very low powered devices. Again, I don't know what type of profiling we'll really be able to do, but that's just an idea. Yeah, there's a small performance hit when you're animating between these pages.
Okay, so it's not necessarily about the personal preference. It is a performance concern.
On any of the devices we have, it's not even a concern at all, right?
Okay.
We're thinking about, like, I have this like $80 Android. For a device like that, it might use a bit more of the CPU, and potentially not much. We should do some testing
Okay.
on how much CPU is used, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not common. I understand it's also an accessibility feature. There are options for people to disable animation on the operating system in accessibility because it can make some people nauseous. And it's just not common on desktop to have all this stuff moving around. So totally get it. I think it's worth having a discussion. Not sure if that is really super priority right now, where we're trying to kind of get this 1.1 version out, but maybe we should just document it. And I think there's a whole bunch of stuff that we know is coming down the road that we want to look at and that we should keep track of. And we can have this conversation. And by the time we get around to doing something about it, we'll hopefully have a good solution identified.
I also, just to add, we have not added any animation. This is default with both the swipe view and the stack view.
Okay.
So this is a default decision with Qt to have an animation. So I imagine that the performance hit is probably very minimal if the default is to have the animation.
Yeah, I mean, that's true as long as it's really just caches and then basically moves an image around instead of kind of re-rendering everything every split second. Then and it's all GPU based, then performance should be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll I guess have to bring him in to voice his side on that. But yeah, we'll just keep that in mind.
No, it's totally fine. I'll create an issue for discussion, and we can lay out just some different ideas of things to do, and then like our tree of possible options, and then we'll just find ourselves along one of those branches and end up doing whatever that ends up being.
Yeah.
Okay, you got 2 minutes left. Lottie animation. I know you asked for them, so for everyone else to provide some context here, we have some illustrations like this one, and we can have Lottie animations. Basically, you enter the screen. These illustrations not just there, but the dots fly in, they connect. We visualize somehow how data moves around the network or something like that. So that would require someone to go into After Effects and export that to Lottie, which is not a big deal. I've done that a whole bunch of times. But the thing is, we would have to figure out an animation style that we like, which kind of sets the tone for all the other animations. Like, it can be quick and hectic and try to be cool. It can be slow and soothing and satisfying, or it can be pulsating, and I don't know, stuff can be happening all over the place. So there are just a bunch of considerations to figure out, and I do think animation kind of sets the tone a little bit. Harold just dropped out, but that's kind of that topic, and I think there's basically this one here, this one, and whether those are the best illustrations in the world is also a TBD. There's this one here about notifications. So yeah, I think it would be really awesome to have, for sure. It's like a mini project.
Sorry, I got kicked out. But if CMake is so close, then we really should just wait until CMake is integrated and then think about adding new things to the build system. So yeah, so I did message that before, but with Habasa's update, maybe we would just wait until after that to even begin that.
Yeah. I mean, something we could definitely do is start the conversation if someone has animation examples, some motion graphics videos, or I don't know, something you think's cool, that we could get inspiration from. That's a good starting point.
Yeah, I mean, I just mentally want to see the animations there because then it feels more polished and more finished, and I think they'd be cool. So
yeah, for sure.
cool. Well, we're at the hour. First off, you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, let's take a look. Pierce details page. I guess we just need to. I posted something. There was a bunch of discussion. I need to follow up, wrap it up, and put it in the design docs, basically. And Michael said that he's going to work on that PR for milestone 1.3, where I had a bunch of feedback on. So just small stuff, small things to do there. And that's it. No?
From my end, I'm going to shill the Bitcoin Core research call that's happening tomorrow. Take this opportunity to do that. That is tomorrow at 3 UTC. Let me just double check. That is at 3 UTC. And to join that, you can simply hop into the events tab in Discord and you'll find the link to join. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome.
I'll definitely be there.
Cool.
Yeah, I'll be there too.
Good stuff.
Awesome, cool. Then thank you all. I will stop the recording here and then we can keep chatting. If you watch this on YouTube, thanks for tuning in. Or Bitcoin TV, that's where we're also at.